Just a heads up before I get into this one, I will be making a video on the royal visit to Australia, specifically Australia, but also other countries in that region soon. There's quite a few things to say about that, so please stay tuned for that one. I'm going to read out a case from the Daily Telegraph. This is from the 17th of October, and I think it's a useful debate point around freedom of speech in this country because I personally think that the way this man was treated was heavy-handed in terms of the penalties. Um, I'll lay out my thoughts on that in a minute, but just a disclaimer: my own views on the abortion issue are it's genuinely one of those things I see both sides. It's not a subject I have strong views on, but I broadly think the UK laws are about right. I don't think they're extreme either way. Um, this is a difficult subject, a bit like the subject of assisted dying. But I believe that if a woman's health is in danger, if it's a rape, if it's an incest, then she should be able to terminate. Um, and as has been pointed out in the American election, even women who are wanting to go to the full term can also have health complications in which an abortion is necessary. Having said that, I agree with those who think that a late stage abortion that is really, really up to term, say 9 months into the pregnancy, I think that late stage when organs are largely developed, I am honestly uneasy with it at that point. But anyway, this is a report from the Daily Telegraph and it's regarding the buffer zones in the UK. This is an army veteran has been convicted after, I should say that the report's by Charles Hymas, the Home Affairs editor. An army veteran has been convicted after praying silently outside an abortion clinic for his unborn son. Adam Smith Connor, who was given a 2-year conditional discharge in order to pay £9,000, claimed that the verdict had criminalised thought. The army reservist who served in Afghanistan was prosecuted for breaching a ban on protest within a legal buffer zone around the clinic in Bournemouth, Dorset. He claimed that he had the right to silently pray for an unborn son whom he now regrets aborting 24 years ago, and that prosecution amounted to criminalising someone's beliefs. But at Poole Magistrates Court yesterday, Judge Orla Austin ruled he had failed to comply with the ban under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act 2014. She said that even though he was engaged in silent prayer, his presence within the buffer zone could still have a detrimental effect on people attending or working at the clinic. He was given the opportunity to leave and chose not to comply with that, she said. The case comes with the Home Office set to enact legislation that will ban protests, including silent prayer, within 150-metre buffer zones around abortion clinics from the end of this month. Mr. Smith Connor said after the hearing, when George Orwell wrote 1984, he meant it as a warning, not as a guidebook. His predictive powers are off by 40 years, but apart from the notion that thought crimes could become established in the British legal systems was sadly accurate. How can we ask British troops to put their lives at risk defending freedom abroad while finding, arresting and imprisoning people back home for the thought crime of praying? This court has decided even a silent prayer is now a criminal act. The BPAS clinic in Bournemouth has been previously targeted by protesters and was made the subject of a public spaces protection order in 2022 by the local council. The order creates an area around the clinic so women visitors and staff can come and go without being harassed by pro-life campaigners. Mr. Smith Connor, 51, was spotted in a public space about 30 feet from the entrance of the clinic on November the 24th, 2022. Catherine Brookfield, a council officer, approached and told him he was in breach of the PSPO and asked him to leave. Mr. Smith Connor, a physiotherapist from Southampton, refused, saying he was expressing his human right to pray and that he was praying in my mind. Miss Brookfield told him that prayer as disapproval was prohibited by the PSPO. He was issued with a £100 fixed penalty, and when he did not pay this, his case went to court for trial. Mr. Smith Connor was supported by Christian charity Alliance Defending Freedom UK. So we have a situation here where you have these buffer zones created ostensibly to stop women and presumably staff as well getting harassed. Now, I'm totally in favour of that if we're talking about people, for example, on megaphones or, say, preaching outside an abortion clinic or really going up to women, going in and trying to, you know, push leaflets at them, that sort of thing, or, telling them they're baby killers or something like that. I think that would be harassment, and it's absolutely there should be measures against that. But I do have a problem with a man who is silently praying, assuming this is the whole story, who's silently praying. That's very different from getting in someone's face. And I don't really see how it could be seen to be harassment. Um, and I think the penalty is quite stiff. £9,000 fine. That's pretty hefty fine. Um, I think he is right to raise concerns. Now, the point I would make here is whatever your views on abortion, we have free speech in this country. We have freedom of conscience, or at least we should. I personally think that the penalty here goes too far. I mean, presumably that hefty fine is due to court costs, but should this even go to court? I'm not sure. Now, like I say, had this guy been getting in people's faces and being really loud, I could understand why that's a problem because, for many women, this is a difficult decision to begin with. So they don't want the extra pressure from that sort of, heckler. But that wasn't what was happening here. He was engaged in silent prayer. So I don't see how you can reasonably describe silent prayer as harassment. Um, I think it's excessive, particularly, and again, this gets into the issue of how justice is applied. Because if you had a gang of teenagers who were harassing people in the form of antisocial behaviour, they'd be doing a community sentence. They might get a fine, but basically, I would argue that they are treated um, no harsher than the way this guy has. Um, the thing about abortion, there's another point worth considering, and this might be controversial. But we always hear about it's a woman's right to choose, and I broadly agree with that. But if you have a situation now, he says this was for his own son, so it's not like he's some religious zealot. There's a personal motivation there. If you have, say, an expectant couple, the TV show Cold Feet actually done a storyline on this once where the characters Adam and Rachel were in the situation. Rachel decided to have an abortion, and Adam didn't know about it, and he kind of designed the whole room out for a new child. He and then when he found out what happened, he was devastated. Should a man, and I'm not talking about some guy that messes around and leaves a woman, I'm talking about a loving father or would be father, should he have absolutely no say? I'm not sure about that. I do think fundamentally it's her, it's her body, so fundamentally it is her choice and her doctor's choice. But I don't agree with some feminists who, for example, would say the father has absolutely no say whatsoever. Isn't that a bit of a hard thing if he's expecting to be a father? And I know feminists think men's feelings don't matter, but he's expecting to be a father, then suddenly it's, the fetus is terminated before it comes to term. I think that would be a hard thing. Um, I'm not suggesting that's the majority of cases, but it does happen. And I assume that's what's happened here when he's talking about, although I assume at that time he says he now regrets it 24 years ago, 2000. Maybe at that time he went along with, his girlfriend or his wife. I just think that the penalty is a bit harsh, and I do think this taps into particularly this Labour government's very poor record on free speech. I mean, do we really want a situation where court resources and time is taken up by essentially, really when it gets down to it, thought crimes? Remember, he wasn't getting in anyone's faces, he wasn't on a megaphone, he wasn't handing out flyers, he was silently praying. Now, I guess you could argue if he was doing it like right at the door where women were going in, that could maybe be seen as deliberately provocative. But I don't know. I personally feel that's overreach. Um, like I say, this is court resources. We have some really serious crimes in this country, but the Labour government, Yvette Cooper, wants the police to spend more time on non-crime hate incidents, documenting that. I want the police to be spending time on serious crimes that really affect people's quality of life, particularly around antisocial behaviour, particularly around young offenders. I just think that, you know, taking, I'm sure Bournemouth has plenty of antisocial behaviour in other ways. This has taken up court resources, and we always hear about the court backlog. There is pressure on the court system. So, should this really be a criminal offence, silent praying? I'm not convinced. I think, he would be crossing a line, like I say, if he was getting in people's faces, if he was on a megaphone, if he was handing out flyers, that could be seen as harassment. But silent prayer, I'm not sure. Let me know your thoughts. I personally think it goes too far. And I'm not, by the way, some sort of pro-lifer. I'm loosely in favor of abortion, the right to terminate if the circumstances warrant it. I don't think it's something that should be celebrated. I do think there are some pro-abortion advocates who do trivialize it. They act like, I've literally heard people, for example, say, "Oh, it's just mush inside." Literally, I've heard that argument. On the other hand, you get, the religious right, particularly in America, have some pretty extreme views. They would even execute women and doctors involved in that. That's also extreme. So I honestly see both sides on this one, but I just think criminalising this man goes too far, and he's right to raise concerns about it. I don't think the Labour government's going to do anything in that regard because, you know, it's the left is, of course, they're going to hammer this point down because it'll be seen as pro women, but it does get into an issue of freedom of conscience. Let me know your thoughts.